Hi,
So are we
everybody.
all?
Ted here with Yoga Sizes. So we have Madhusatta Chaudhury here today. Would you be preferred? You like to be called Madhu, right? For short.
Madhu, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. She's in India right now, and she shared with me about her story a little bit. She's from India, and she's been practicing yoga since 9. I'm really excited to have her here with us. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. She practices Ashtanga yoga, Mysore. I'll let her continue with her story. I don't want to share everything with you guys. I'll let her do the sharing.
So hi everyone. This is Madhu. I am from Calcutta, India, from the state of West Bengal. Calcutta is the city. So I'm so happy to be on with Pam on her podcast, and I would love to share my story with you all. So I started doing yoga at the age of 9 because I had congenital asthma, and my doctor suggested that yoga and pranayama are the best healers for asthma in the long run if you don't want to depend on inhalers or tablets or anti-allergics and things like that. So my parents put me to yoga so that I can cure my asthma, and I started doing Hatha yoga and pranayama. And by the age of 10, I started participating in several competitions that were held in India. It was like by the Indian Federation of Yoga, and I won 3 district, 3 city, and 3 national level championships in the junior girls section. And by the time I reached 15, I somehow had to quit yoga because of my board exams and college, and later on because of my job pressure. I barely got time to practice, and I should say I was out of touch for almost 20 to 25 years, like no yoga at all from the time like I used to do 14, 15 hours a day because I used to participate in competitions, and from there I just quit everything and there was zero yoga in my life. But then later on, due to long hours on the computer, I started having low back pain. Somehow my asthma came back. I had to use inhalers regularly. I couldn't climb stairs. It was difficult for me to do like even little bit of exercise. So then I thought, okay, it's time I get back to my yoga, because there was a time I was completely healed from like it being having asthma attacks for weeks and days successively. I was completely healed, and I had no memory of my asthma for like 5, 6, 7 years. I had done yoga. So there I again restarted doing, and gradually I got a hang of it again because it was always in me, and somehow I started flipping those old competition albums, and that was my target. Okay, I have to again reach there what I used to do then. But by then my body was already stiff, so I started doing 2, 3 hours of yoga, and in another 2, 3, 4 years I gradually got there. And then my friends started saying, okay Madhu, you have done so much yoga since your childhood, and now again you are doing, and you know the medical benefits of yoga, so why don't you start teaching? So I thought, okay, that's not a bad idea. I can start teaching yoga. So I went to Mysore. I did my teacher training in Ashtanga Yoga from the Yoga Alliance. So the institute was India Yoga Mysore. It's quite renowned in India, and it's quite renowned globally also. If you search, you'll get. So it was under my guru, Mr. Bharat Shetty. So he used to teach under like the Krishnamacharya style and the Pattabhi Jois style, the Ashtanga style, which you say, which is the conservative Ashtanga style. And I really, really liked practicing Ashtanga. I completed the primary series, and maybe next year I'll go back for the level 2 for the intermediate and the advanced series. And I came back to Calcutta and I started doing classes and workshops on Ashtanga Yoga. And that's pretty much my journey. And I am absolutely enjoying it. And my low back pain has disappeared. My asthma is not like there anymore. Like sometimes I get maybe a allergic bout, but it's almost not there. It's negligible, so to say. So the medical benefits of yoga is immense, and I am myself a person who has experienced this over and over again. So there's nothing like yoga in my life. Nothing can substitute that.
That's amazing what yoga can do, right? The healing benefits of yoga. I'm so glad that yoga has helped you to overcome the asthma and the lower back pain. Um,
Right.
During the time that you weren't doing yoga and then you ended up going back to yoga, so what helped you mentally, physically, spiritually? Like what aspect helped you to go back to it? Because I know this is quite common that people just fall out of something that they started, but then they know that the benefits of it, and then eventually they'll end up going back to it.
Right. So, like I said, I went back to it because I started developing symptoms again of my asthma, and this low back pain was a new thing, and my energy level was really down. And once I started doing it, like even the basic Hatha yoga, which I again restarted, because when I restarted, I was an absolute beginner again. There was like I wasn't a practitioner because I had quit it for such a long time. So I gradually saw after a month or two my energy levels increasing. I'm mentally feeling a lot happier, little things which used to bother me throughout the day, I was able to ignore them, and I was able to think about them on a much positive light, like, okay, this has come my way, so this is how I can overcome it. There's nothing to be negative about it. And when you do yoga, what happens, you set little goals for yourself, like today you are seeing you are unable to do a pose, and then after 2 weeks of consistent practice you suddenly see yes, you could do it. So that I started implementing in my daily life, in my daily work also, that okay, if today something seems impossible to be, maybe if I stick on to it and keep on going, maybe after a month or two, this is something I'll be able to do. So, like the no quitting attitude, I learned from yoga, so as to say. So, that's that is the biggest lesson I have learned from my yoga, that if you are sticking to something, if you are consistent in practicing something, if you are dedicated towards something, whatever you want in life, you will be able to achieve it. So
Right, just having that, you freeze up. Can you hear me? Okay,
uh-huh.
you can, all right, because you just stopped moving, so I just wasn't sure. All right. So just like basically changing your routine, not changing it, but kind of arrange it in a way that yoga can fit in, and that's part of, you pretty much set the high level of importance for yoga, right?
Right. So I started with like 15-20 minutes a day, and I started to be very regular. Like I never missed a day. Even there were days when I didn't feel like doing it. I was lazy. I didn't feel physically or mentally up to doing it. So I just said myself, okay, just 10 minutes. Just don't say no. Just do 10 minutes. And then eventually I ended up doing 1 hour. So my studio name, as you must have seen in my Facebook page, I have named it Grab Your Mat. Because when I used to feel low or demotivated, I used to tell myself, okay, just grab your mat, put it on the floor, just sit on it, and you will eventually end up doing something. So that's how I motivated myself, and that's what I tell my students. Okay, the days you are feeling low, you are not feeling like doing it, just put your mat on the floor and sit on that and watch television maybe. And the moment you do it, trust me, you end up doing something. So just grab your mat. That's how I set myself in the routine and started getting. And after like 6 months or 7 months, if I missed one day, I used to feel there's something missing in my life. So what's missing today? What I didn't do? Oh, it's yoga that I didn't do. So that automatically comes after 6-7 months. And before that, that grab your mat really helped me. Just grabbing the mat, laying it, and sitting there and start practicing.
That's so creative. I meant to ask you how you came up with that name. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I'll share with everybody in the description of the video and the podcast, I'll share your link so people can check it out. It's a really nice site.
Right, yeah. So that's how, whenever someone asks me, how did you come with a name, grab your mat, it's so unconventional, I tell them my story, because that's what I used to tell myself when I used to not feel like doing yoga at all. Just grab your mat and sit there quietly. Maybe you just do a pranayama, maybe just you meditate for a bit, maybe you just do nothing, just put it on and sit on it. And eventually you will do something.
I like that. So besides grab your mat, like what other mantras or affirmations that you use to help you to get through the day and to help you to be consistent?
So I usually keep a fixed time for my yoga. That helps. Like I'm working in medical transcription, so I work for US doctors. So I work in the US time zone. So basically, my routine is to practice yoga in the evening because I wake up pretty late in the morning because I work till late in night Indian time. So that 2 hours I have kept set from my yoga, and whatever comes in my way, that 2 hours I know it's for yoga. Maybe some invitation has come up or some guest has come up. So I tell myself, okay, those 2 hours you are booked, so you can't do yoga now, so you have to do it like in the morning or do it sometime. But just don't miss it. It's like your lunch, dinner, your food, you're taking a shower. Like we don't miss those, right? We don't give an excuse like, okay, we couldn't eat today because someone has come up or I have a party. We still do that. So this is like a regular regimen, and whatever comes your way, those 2 hours you have to keep aside for this. And gradually that became my regular routine. Now that's in my system that even if in those 2 hours, the set hours I am booked, I usually shift it to another part of the day and start practicing then.
I love it. Block it out of your calendar. So that's the time, non-negotiable. I'm going to get it done and it's going to happen and nothing's
Right, right. It's a habit. It's like no excuses, yes.
right. That's awesome. So tell us more about Ashtanga yoga. Why is it different than other styles and why did you choose this style?
Right. So Hatha yoga, as you will be knowing, is the slower form of yoga where you hold each pose for a longer amount of time. And maybe you do 10, 12 poses in an hour's time and hold for like 20, 30 seconds as your body permits. Ashtanga is a lot faster version of Hatha yoga, where going from one pose to other, you use something called the Vinyasa flow. So it's basically transition from one flow to the other. It's not like I'm just doing a lotus pose and going to the crow pose directly. Even there's a way of jumping back and jumping forth and getting into a different pose. So it's a lot of cardio. It's a lot faster than the Hatha yoga thing. And that is exactly what I liked about Ashtanga. And it's a lot of like, what should I say? It gives you much more energy. So each body is different, each person is different. So for me, Ashtanga yoga really worked because Hatha yoga was too slow and too gentle for me, but this gave me the cardio as well as the benefits of the yoga, and it's a lot more challenging. So every day it gives me a different goal. Okay, today you have to achieve this, and then maybe next month you transition from here to there. So you get that motivation to practice more and more because you have to reach somewhere else, and it's not the same thing that you go on doing regularly each day. So that's what the Ashtanga style is mostly about, and then it gives you a lot more strength and flexibility than Hatha yoga, what I feel, because you are continuously challenging your body to grow, and not like that gentle Hatha yoga practice, which I feel is more meditative. Someone else's experience might be totally different because for yoga, I have seen each people experience yoga in a different way. Some people really love it, some people don't like it at all, some people like gentle yoga, some people like faster yoga. So it's totally what suits your mind and body. So the style Ashtanga suited me more. So I got into it and I like practicing it and I like teaching Ashtanga Yoga, though I teach Hatha Yoga as well because to do Ashtanga Yoga, you need to have a base of Hatha Yoga, a bit of flexibility or strength. If you don't have, you can't just start doing Ashtanga Yoga. So Hatha Yoga is the foundation and you must learn it at first. So I start my classes doing that with that, but gradually transition to the Ashtanga style because, and I see like if my students have an ailment, like they've come with arthritis or hip problems or joint problems or back problems, then I don't immediately start them on Ashtanga and let them gradually, maybe over a span of 2 3 years, do Hatha and get used to it. But totally physically fit people and younger people, I just encourage them to do Ashtanga because that will give them the cardio effect, the strength, the flexibility, the challenge, everything they need to move on. So that's the basic difference between Ashtanga and Hatha. And I do a bit of aerial as well because that helps me build my flexibility, though I don't teach that, but I find the aerial form also quite nice.
So what would you suggest? How would you approach? What, or I should ask, how long would you think, like for a beginner, how long would it take for them to like kind of feel comfortable, like being able to do the poses and be able to get the routine of Ashtanga yoga?
I feel for an absolute beginner, see, by beginner, there are also different sorts of people. Some people may be beginner at yoga, but they are very athletic. Maybe they are playing soccer, or maybe they are into cricket, or maybe they are into running. So they are basically into some sort of movement. So for them to get accustomed to Ashtanga won't take that amount of time. Of course, it, the time the body takes to open up, that much time they will take. But there are some people who haven't moved at all, who haven't been into any sort of sport, and yoga is the first thing they are doing. I feel it will take them a bit more time to get used to it because that's what I have noticed in my classes, that people with a bit of athletic background, they pick it up a bit faster than people who have never moved or never done any form of exercise or never been into any sort of sport. So for them, so both of them are beginners in yoga if you talk about being a beginner, but for athletic people it's faster, and for like a non-athletic people it's a bit slower. But then again, it depends on how much you are practicing. Maybe someone's practicing twice a week and someone's practicing 7 days a week. Of course they will pick it up quickly than the person who's doing twice a week. And then it depends on how our body responds to it, how it's opening up. Like when I started practicing, my hip openers, my forward bendings really came very fast. Like within a span of a month or two, I could do a full split. But then I have seen people that they are struggling with a split for a year or two. For me, back bendings were a bit of challenge, maybe because of a lot of computer work. My upper back is a bit stiff, the upper back and shoulder. So deepening a back bend where you need a lot of shoulder and upper back opening up, so it's a bit challenging for me, so I'm still on that practicing. So it totally depends on body to body, every body is different, and it totally depends on where you have come from, what sort of profession you were in, what's your regular routine, and then of course how your body is responding to it, how much you are practicing. So giving a definite timeline like 1 month, 2 month, or 1 year is very difficult. It's very individualistic.
That's true, and it's so right about the different bodies types, that body style, and their habits and everything. And it's important to realize when, like, basically follow your body, right? Like, do what
Right.
feels right. Don't compare yourself with others.
No, don't compare, never force your body, never rush to get into a pose. When you are ready, your body will automatically tell you are ready. So that happened to me when I started practicing the Pincha Mayurasana. So, and going from Pincha to the Scorpio pose. So I tried for months and it was very difficult for me to kick up. And one day suddenly I was there and I could balance myself for like a count of 10 and 12, I was like, wow, so that's how your body says, okay, now you are ready for that, for your transition to a different one. So, and forcing your body or rushing to get into a pose will get you injuries, will let you not practice yoga for a month or two. I have seen several stories where people have injured themselves, and then they have written like, okay, Ashtanga is not good because you get injury prone and you hurt yourself. And so it's not a form of yoga you should practice, but I would say it's not Ashtanga. It's we who are to blame, because we see a group doing and we see someone else who can do the pose and we rush ourselves, force ourselves to do that, and we hurt ourselves. So yoga is totally something you practice in your personal space and you do it at your own pace. So there's nothing to do with who can, who can't. And the moment you rush or force yourself, you might land up with a very serious injury. That's what I start my class with.
Right, that's very important. um,
Right.
as for eating before the practice, I hear different things. People say don't eat 3 hours prior to practicing, and some people have like do different things. Like some people fast during a period of time. Like, what do you recommend for eating and drinking prior to a practice?
I also recommend like empty stomach works well. Of course, 2 to 3 hours before yoga, you should like finish a big meal at least 3 hours before yoga. So, but before coming to a class, if you are very hungry, if you are like having a biscuit or a cookie, it's okay. And drinking, I won't recommend like having a bottle of yoga immediately before practicing or before the class, because that really makes you nauseous when you do poses like the Dhanurasana or the Salvasana or the locust pose, like anything that you are on your belly. So suddenly you feel, or the shoulder stand, you suddenly feel a sort of regurgitation happening and burping happening. But yeah, throughout the class, you can have small sips of water if you want to have, not like drink at a stretch. And food, I also recommend that for like 3 hours or 2 hours, you have nothing before a yoga class. I guess that is better.
Okay. Speaking of drinking, besides water, what else do you drink? Like maybe tea or some herbal stuff, or I don't know.
So during the class, if you ask me during the class, it's better just that you just have sips of plain water, not like something like coffee, tea, or things like that, because those are the things you just can't have sips throughout the class. You feel like having more frequently. But water is something like after two poses, you take a water break and have a sip and do the next level. But before your yoga class, okay, if you want to have a small cup of green tea, that is fine. Coffee, I usually don't recommend, because uh, sometimes, I don't know what happens with others, but coffee sometimes makes me more energetic than usual, and I start attempting doing things I shouldn't at my stage. So, no energy drink, no coffee, nothing that will give you that sudden kick to something extra than what your body is ready for. So, but a herbal tea or a green tea is totally fine. So I absolutely don't recommend any energy drink before coming to any exercise class.
That makes sense because you don't want
Right.
to. Yeah. How it affects the body and everything, and usually those energy drinks are not even healthy anyway. As for the do you use like type of scent like aromatherapy in your classes, or just for your own use aside from the classes?
Sometimes I use certain essential oils, because they are supposed to help in certain poses. Like for a back bending class, maybe I will use an orange essential oil because it helps with. And mostly, if I am doing a chakra awakening class, Then I use some aromatherapy, maybe the chakra awakening essential oils, which are suitable for each chakra, so that we can get an ambience and people can get into the thing. Because chakra awakening, more than yoga, it's a bit meditative. So we do poses as well as some meditation in it. But a regular Ashtanga class, I don't use any sort of aromatherapy or anything. Maybe sometimes a bit of music. And I have launched something called yoga dance with a friend of mine. She is a classical dancer. So now we are like, what we are doing, instead of going from one yoga pose to another yoga pose in the vinyasa style or any other yoga style, we are like just choreographing it a bit with few dance steps in it and making a bit more interesting for people who love both yoga and dancing. So some classes we do that, and for those classes we, of course, we use a little bit of instrumental music so that people get into rhythm. But normal Ashtanga class, I usually avoid anything because following the cues is very important. So music might distract you. And Ashtanga is all about your mind, body, and breath in sync. So maybe you are allergic to some sort of essential oil or that's disturbing you, then you can't coordinate your mind, breath, and body that way. The inhale, exhale won't happen in the same way. So in Ashtanga class, I usually avoid everything. But if it's a meditative class or a yoga dance class, maybe I use aromatherapy or a bit of music and things like that.
Yeah, there's really a lot involved when you're taking a class, all your senses, and you have to, be
Right.
aware of that. Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned music and dancing. I know in Ashtanga yoga, you guys do the chants. Can you go into more detail about the chants and what they mean?
Actually, not exactly in Ashtanga Yoga, but when we are doing a Surya Namaskar or a sun salutation, we usually do it with the chants. Like we usually chant 12 names of sun with the 12 steps of sun salutation. Sun has got different names as per Indian mythology and in Sanskrit. So for each step, we chant a different name. And we usually start a class with a chant so that, you know, that allows you to get that calmness and letting go rest of the activities you did through the day and bring that stillness and getting you on the mat and getting you ready to absorb whatever you are doing in the class. And we usually end the class with another chant, like those are little things we'll tell ourselves, like be happy, keep others happy, and we let students also come up with their own chants, not exactly chants, but like what they are feeling after the class, like, and the others also repeat it after them so that we build a bond in the class and the class doesn't become too competitive, but where people help each other and there's this bond that we will progress together. And we do a bit of introduction of the 8 limbs of yoga in the class, the basic 8 limbs, the philosophy, yoga philosophy, where it comes from, like the yama, niyama, the asana, pranayama, the withdrawal, the discipline you need, the societal disciplines you need to maintain, and how gradually that can lead you to withdrawal and let you focus and help you meditate. And then obviously when you reach a certain level, it helps you to go into samadhi, which is getting one with the universe, where you are aligned with the universe. That's the main perspective of yoga. That's what every yogi wants to achieve at one point in time, that you are in sync with the universe and you are in connection with the universe. So I give them a bit of yoga philosophy briefing, like how yoga generated and why is it important and how is it like a such an age old practice, and how gradually worldwide people are getting into yoga. It's not because that it's a form of exercise which will help you build strength, flexibility, or help you cure diseases. Maybe there are other forms of exercise which will help you do that, but this in sync, getting in sync with the universe, the thing around you is only achieved through yoga and not through any other sort of sport. Like where you feel every other fellow human being, every other creation in the nature is like, should have a space as good as you. If I'm making any sense, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Is like live and let live. That's what yoga first teaches you. There's no competition, there's no jealousy, there's like it's peace everywhere. And if you have peace within yourself, and if you are having happiness within yourself, that is what you will give to others. So that's what we try to develop through our practice. If I'm negative inside me, if I'm unhappy, that's what I'll give you. So first that self practice of cleansing myself physically, mentally, and then that giving that practice to someone else where the person gets rid of their negative feelings and things. And the chants basically, there are of course loads of Sanskrit chants they which if you repeat day by day, they are making you remember or making you feel, oh, this is the way my life should be and this is the way I should be. But then after the class, you tend to forget it. But once you know the yoga philosophy, once you know the basis of yoga, once you know where it came from, and once you know why you are practicing it, even if you forget the chants, you won't forget that is imbibed within you. So
Mention a few points that I want to bring up. First, you mentioned about the philosophy of yoga. What are some books that you recommend, or I don't know, videos that you recommend in terms of getting more information on the philosophy of yoga?
There are the Patanjali Sutras. There are several sutras of Patanjali. If you go online, you can find all of them listed and translated in English, because they are in Sanskrit. It's usually very difficult to understand. So if you get something where the sutras are translated into English, and that is the basis of all yoga. So there are two parts of the Patanjali Sutras which you have to go through in your teacher training, as well as you take references of in your class. So those are something I recommend, that before starting yoga, you at least go through those once. And even if you don't understand fully, whatever you understand, you try to absorb and practice that. And gradually, once you get into yoga, the other sutras which you once didn't understand will start making sense. And there's this book called Light of Yoga by B.K.S. Iyengar. It's a very, very good book. Like, it's very easy to understand. It has got yoga poses and all its benefits, and why you are doing a certain pose, and what's the process of getting into a pose and getting out of it. So if you don't have a good yoga teacher near you, and if you don't have access to online videos, if you just have the book, you can start doing the poses by yourself. And it's so self-explanatory and so nicely written and so easily written. I absolutely recommend that book to every person who wants to practice yoga.
Thank you for sharing those recommendations. They are really good books to read. You also mentioned about during the practice, they're able to see their true self, like be able to learn more reveals as you deepen your practice. So how would you, like, what kind of advice would you give to people that are just starting to having these realizations, but maybe at the beginning they're a little confused, or they don't know what to do with these feelings that they've never experienced before? Like, how would you approach that?
So what I usually say is, the way you are responding, respond. Don't suppress your feelings. So in a yoga class, I have seen people crying. I have absolutely seen them crying. And when you ask them, why are you crying? They're unable to say why they are crying. So we term them as blocked energies, like our hips, our shoulders, our other joints are supposed to store trapped negative energy. So once you start doing yoga, once you start that deep breathing exercises, gradually those energy channels are unblocked and the negative energy is untrapped, and then you respond in different ways. Some people cry, some people feel very happy unnecessarily, some people are confused, like some days they are very happy, some days they are very low. So what we suggest is just go with it. Don't question yourself, like why am I feeling like this? Every feeling we go throughout the day is pretty normal. There shouldn't be a like shame or guilt that why am I feeling this way? Maybe I'm feeling like crying and I should let that out. I should cry. That doesn't make me weak in any way, or I shouldn't have a sense of guilt, or I shouldn't feel that I'm creating a scene in the class, because that's the thing I am supposed to let out, and that's the thing that is coming out of me. It's like getting disease free. Suppose with certain diseases you get certain symptoms. So these are the symptoms your mental health is showing that you need to get out and you need to get rid of those. So the more you suppress those, the more it will make you uncomfortable. And like it said, whatever pain in the hips or joints or anywhere else we experience are maybe 70% mental and 30% physical. It's all trapped energies that are built up there and stored, and those are later manifested as pain or other forms. And so I absolutely encourage my students, my friends, or whoever is around me, that whatever you feel, just say, share, let it go. Don't suppress things. There's nothing to be embarrassed, there's nothing to be ashamed of, there's no guilt in saying things that you feel or doing things that you feel. So
Yes, definitely let it out. Because if you don't, if you suppress it and hold on to it without sharing it, that causes additional issues in addition
right.
to what you experience already. Right, definitely. So, do you recommend like journaling, or like just besides talking to friends, actually just like writing it down?
Yeah, anything that helps. Maybe sharing with a friend, maybe writing it down, maybe talking about it in the class. Like 2 weeks back, one of my students suddenly came to the class and I saw her. She wasn't focusing on what I was saying and she couldn't concentrate. And I asked her what the problem is, and she said that I feel like crying. I said, okay, if you feel like doing that, please do that. We are here waiting. But it's not that you suppress that thing in you and continue with the class and then continue with your daily life, and that thing later on gets manifested as something different. So you can write it, you can maybe put on a recorder and record it, and later when you listen to it, you will see that is making so much more sense. The confusion in your head is cleared, because when there are a lot of times when we're listening to so many people around us, we don't listen to ourselves. So what I like is, sometimes when I'm very confused or I'm feeling very troubled, I try to talk about it and record it, and then I want to listen to it. That is my way of listening to myself. So you know so anything that helps you. Maybe you go out for a walk, maybe you share with a colleague, maybe you share with a friend, but just let it go in whichever way you can.
Yeah, those are really great suggestions.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Sanskrit. How important is Sanskrit in Ashtanga Yoga? And what, like, because I know how people, when they know they should do something, but they come up with excuses just to not do it. What if somebody says, okay, people use Sanskrit in yoga classes, and I don't know how to do it, so I'm not gonna, go, like, there, excuses like, using, not knowing
Right.
Sanskrit.
Not to do that. So what I usually do in my class, I mention the Sanskrit name of a asana or a pose, and then I translate it in English so that it's easier for everyone to remember and understand and where it came from, because the yoga poses, the Sanskrit names are very related to the pose you are doing. So if you understand the meaning of the name, it's easier for you to get into a pose. Like what I'm saying, like maybe kakasana or the crow pose. So if you understand that crow and the Sanskrit version of it, kak, are similar things, and you understand how the crow is sitting in a posture. It's easier for you to visualize it and get into a pose. And there are several other Sanskrit names which exactly depicts the way the pose is. Like a Parvatasana is the mountain pose. You can understand, okay, so the mountain is like this, so my body should be shaped like this. So I usually say the Sanskrit name and the English translation of it, and when they are into the pose, I show them their shape and tell them this is how the name was derived, because your body becomes like that. In a downward dog, you look like that, like a proper dog stretch, and in a camel pose, you look like that. In a Hanumanasana or a split, you look like the mythological Hanuman taking its leap. So it's, if you understand the Sanskrit as well as the English meaning of it, and you try to match it with the pose shape, it's easier for you to understand that and get into it. And when it comes to yoga philosophy, like I said, most of this is these days translated in English. And you know, with all these online translators, even if you are not that conversant in English, you are translating it into French or German or Spanish. So in today's world, it's not very difficult getting something translated if you don't understand. So, you know, that is something which is not at all an excuse anymore.
Yeah, the understanding and the visualization definitely helps piecing
Right.
everything together. Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
like a tree pose. So you understand, okay, this is a tree. So this is the way the poses should be. And you know the Sanskrit name of it. And that way it's easier for you to remember. Like Brikshasana, tree pose, and this is how I'm standing. So it's pretty easy. So when I take classes for children, they find it very interesting because I do an animal flow with them, and I say this is a frog pose, and I show them a picture of the frog, and I give them the Sanskrit word of frog, and then they know the English word, the Sanskrit word, and then they know how the pose should be, and then it's easier for them to get into it without giving a lot of verbal cues. And they find it very interesting, like, okay, we are creating an animal pose, we are looking like a certain animal.
The last part, it was hard for me to hear. You said annual what? I missed that last word.
Uh, like I was saying, like in the children's classes, where like I teach a group of children who are from 6 to the age of 12, I do animal flows with them. So we pick up yoga postures which are named after animals, and I make them practice those, and they find that class very interesting. I give them pictures of those animals and then how they are looking in the pose, and then give them the Sanskrit name as well as the English name, and then they combine all four, and it's easier for them to remember the names, easier for them to understand how to get into the pose without giving a lot of verbal cues. So it's in them. They see the animal, they see themselves, they see the thing, and they get it done. And it's a fun class, so they really like the animal flow and the fun class.
That would be really cool to see. Yeah, I like animals too when I use them in classes with children. I also work with children as well.
Right,
That's
right.
awesome.
So
So
most of the yoga poses are derived from either animals or trees or mountains, like everything you get around you, everything from nature. So giving a picture, setting an example is very, very easy. And that also helps them understand that when I'm doing this form of, I won't call it exercise, when I'm doing yoga, I am so close to nature because I am one of them. I can be like them. So, and like, you know, so what I'm trying to say, that all these things we try to teach children, don't be cruel to animals and take care of them, and this world belongs to them as much as they belong to you. So when in my animal flow classes, I tell them, you see, you now are in a frog pose, and beside you a frog is in a frog pose. So it's so similar. You are also a part of nature. The frog is also a part of nature. So we share the same space. Why can't we be friends and stay like that? So it's easier for them to understand that way.
So you don't even need to be around them, you know, close in distance wise to be able to still get the benefits of like being part of nature. You can even practice at home and then you can still get that
Huh?
sense because you're working with those animal poses.
Right. So in winters, because India is pretty hot and humid, winters I usually prefer to take outdoor classes so that they are more out in the nature. Because in summers and monsoons here it's not possible. So the 2-3 months of winter we practice outside and we see the things around us and try to feel that.
Do you do like retreats and stuff like that? And you mentioned workshops, I think at the beginning. So what type of workshops do you do?
Uh, Different sorts of workshops like stress management. Like I start with pure Ashtanga. There are people who want pure Ashtanga workshops because Ashtanga is a style which is pretty popular in south of India, but in the east of India, where I belong to, people are not very acquainted with this form of yoga. So when they hear like Ashtanga yoga, they really, really want to experience that. So I take beginners workshops of Ashtanga yoga, and then I do gentle yoga workshops. Like I did sometime back, I did Hatha yoga workshop for and university faculty members because they were like quite old, around 60 plus or 70 plus. So they enjoyed that gentle form of Hatha yoga. And I do stress management yoga classes for the corporates where I teach them pranayama, meditation, other forms of stress management, as well as some workplace yoga like chair yoga. Like you are in a desk job and 8 hours you are sitting in a chair, what form of movement you can do in that space to keep your body moving, a bit of back bend, front bend, a chair form of sun salutation, side bending, lateral bending, back bending, all in the chair. So I have a module of chair yoga session. It's like a 15-20 minute thing which you can do in your office just sitting in your desk. So I teach that, and then I do children's workshop, like I said, these animal flows and getting children interested in yoga, because for them yoga is a slow thing. They want to go out and play. So just getting them into it, that no, this is also fun and you can do so many challenging things with your body. It's a bit of a task, but once they get into it, they really, really enjoy the workshops and they want to come back. And then I try to do workshops for schools so that they make yoga compulsory in the schools, because because I started yoga at a very early age, I know the benefits a child can get from it. So it's building your foundation. So that's the age. If you start, it gets your body in a different posture, heals several diseases, gives you more confidence. So school workshops I usually do, and like that's about it.
That's awesome. I love all the different workshops that you do and the teachings. So how long do they usually run for? Like, is it like a day thing or like 2 day, a week? You know?
No, I usually do 1 hour, but there are intensive workshops like which is 3 days in a week for 1 hour each or 2 hours each. But on a particular day, I don't want to exceed more than 1.5 hours, because I don't want to like clog them with too much information and they don't, by the end of the workshop, they're all confused and tired. So I usually prefer like maybe 2 days a week, an intense 1.5 hours, but on a particular day it has to be 1 hour or 1.5 hours and not go beyond that.
And so you say you do them locally, right?
Right, yeah. In
Oh, okay.
Calcutta, yeah. I plan to do some retreats in future, but I haven't done any yet. So
Mhm.
to go
So
out.
let's just say if people like in the area, is there on your website, does it show your schedule of your local workshops?
I usually give them on Facebook a bit beforehand on my page. So like I give a 1 week or 1.5 week registration time. Yeah, and on my Facebook events page, you can see all those schedules. So
All right, I'll post those as well. Um, in terms of, let me see, trying to think. I think those are my questions for now. Yeah. Just want to thank you again for coming on. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners with us?
uh, I would just love to share that yoga changed my life. It's changed me as a person, and I would love everyone who's listening to this interview, just to start with at least 15 minutes of yoga per day, and you see how it changes your life in the long run. More than the body, more than your posture, more than curing ailments, it will change your entire mindset towards looking at things, make you a lot more positive, and make you a lot happier person. So next time you think whether I should start yoga or not, the not or not is not an option. Just grab your mat and start it.
And honestly, like, doesn't matter. You can start at any level. Like you
No, no,
mentioned
no.
chair yoga. I teach chair yoga, and it's like even if you're in a wheelchair or at your desk or any type of ability you're able to do, you can start yoga at any
I
level and
say
work your way up.
I usually say everybody can, and like by everybody I mean everybody can. Like you can be an amputee, you can be wheelchair bound, you can be old, you can have a lot of mobility issues, but yoga is something which is meant for all. You just start and your body will tell you how to get on with it. And if you want someone to motivate you, you just get a good teacher or sign up to a good YouTube class or online class and just go on doing it regularly, because yoga is something which you can do anywhere. You just need a place, you just need your yoga mat, and you just need to get started. There's not like you have to go to a faraway gym, you need a lot of equipments to do, you need to buy a whole lot of things to get it started. All you need is a mat or a place, a rug, a towel, anything on the grass, just get it started. There's nothing you need. You just need your own will and your own motivation, nothing else.
Definitely. And sometimes at times you might feel like, okay, I'm not making progress, I feel like I'm stuck. But then if you're patient and if you continue, and then you will notice the difference. Like sometimes it could be drastic difference and it'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm seeing the change.
Exactly. I suddenly could do something I never thought I'll be able to. So
So just be open-minded and just do it. Just get started, right?
be persistent, be dedicated, be mindful. Whatever you are doing through the day, be mindful towards it, and you will definitely get what you want. Because you attract that. What you think, you attract that, is what I completely believe. So if you think I can't do, you won't be able to do. And if you think you can do, how impossible it might sound, you can do it. Because you are attracting that towards you.
Definitely that mentality it makes a big difference.
Very big difference.
Very big difference. Thank you so much for being on. I've learned a lot and I can't wait to share with the listeners and viewers, and I'll keep you posted on when everything's up.
And thank you so much for this initiative. You have started this podcast and you are helping so many people, because I have heard a couple of interviews and all of them are so motivating. Thanks for starting up with something like this.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for, without people like you, I wouldn't be able to do these, right? So thank you for being on.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day.
You too. Thanks.